Ready to go?
So,
All right. Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming out. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. The regular board meetings of the Los Olivos Community Service District, July 8th at 6:04 p.m. Just before we do the roll call again, just a general comment. Like I said, we're expecting a lot of public comment, so we're going to ask everybody to please submit a card if you want to comment on general comment, public comment, or any specific agenda item. And each agenda item will just remind you to do that. Now, like I said, just going to be really helpful for us to maintain some order because we're expecting a lot of public comment. So with that, we'll go ahead to roll call.
Director Farrow. Here. Director Parks. Here. Director Nelson. Here. President Kennedy.
Here.
Remotely, Lisa Palmer, Director.
Here.
Okay. And one last item, staff has requested that we switch agenda items number 8 and number 9. So just we're going to do that this evening. Next up, let's go ahead and everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and with that, we're going to move on to public comment again. If you'd like to make a comment about something not on the agenda, this would be your opportunity. Again, we just ask that you complete a card. So we'll start off with Michelle DeWord. Get here. Why is she doing this?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Supervisor Hartman states in a letter to me, the threat is drinking water, and more significantly, basin water quality standards is well documented. It is clear given isotopic studies that the nitrate comes from sewage, not from ag. I subsequently asked Supervisor Hartman in writing to provide these specific isotopic studies that supposedly prove septic systems are the culprit. The response was absolute silence. Either Supervisor Hartman does not have the data to back up her claim, or these solutions simply do not exist. Which is it? Making massive public infrastructure decisions based on unprovided, unverified studies is a failure of transparency. If this data exists, produce it to the public. If it does not, this project lacks substantial evidence required to move forward. Public board members have a fiduciary and a legal responsibility to ensure that public funds are spent responsibly, transparently, and based on substantial evidence. When two board members consider a major infrastructure project like a large-scale sewer system, voting yes without documented proof of need, while relying on generalities like it's for the greater good, raises serious governance, legal, and ethical concerns. This is not a school board decision, school bond decision. The baseline cost of building a 5 to 7 mile gravity pipeline from Los Olivos down Alamo Picado is already highly contentious, but the hidden financial risk lies at the end of the pipe. If Solvang's wastewater treatment plant infrastructure faces regulatory compliance penalties down the line, Los Olivos will have zero operational control over those skyrocketing regional maintenance fees. Your decision has posed a tremendous threat to our community's character. Long after each of you have left this board, and perhaps this town, the consequences will be your legacy. I believe all of you are unqualified to make a decision of this magnitude. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Catherine Rohr.
Very Phil, how are you? I am not here just as your neighbor. I'm here tonight as a member of the Dunn School Board of Trustees, and I serve on our Building and Grounds Committee as well. I'm commenting tonight because I want to ensure that you the Los Olivos CSD board members and the wider community are aware of the Dunn School's continued interest in exploring ways that LOCSD could cite advanced treatment like the Advantech system that they've had on our campus for years on Dunn Middle School land. I've heard rumors indicating that Dunn wasn't interested in this proposition, but I can assure you that Dunn was the one that reached out to you, and it's never understood why the LOCSD ceased to engage on the topic. Rumors are that there are objections regarding smells from neighbors. Those are unfounded. The Dunn community has successfully operated a fully underground Advantech treatment system on our campus for years. I also heard a concern that you thought you would need to annex Dunn to the district in order to site our treatment system there. That is not true. Your council has already weighed in on the ability of the district to site its treatment facility extraterritorially. So the objections don't exist, and Dunn stands ready, willing, and able to return to the table with you and negotiate. Oh, one other objection I heard was that you all didn't know how to do a 99-year lease, but that is super common. It happens all the time for infrastructure projects. And we will be happy to work with you on that and help you through that. But please don't foreclose this wonderful opportunity to work locally, to create a local solution, perhaps using some of the more modern treatment approaches, collection and treatment approaches that could really help preserve the size of our community, protect our environment, and improve our groundwater quality with an appropriately scaled project. So please contact us. We're there. Cal, Amy, any of us, we're excited to talk with you.
Thank you. Next up, Keith Sarlus.
Hi, everybody. My major concern with this project is transparency. And one of the things that I'm asking for, we're talking about groundwater. We're talking about nitrate levels. And one of the things that's so absolutely amazing about this is we're talking about 12 parts per million. That's literally like filling up 12 5-gallon buckets full of pennies and then taking one out of each one. And that is the problem that we're trying to solve. The issue I have is no one's getting red tagged. The wells that people have around here aren't getting red tagged. I need to know that we have a proof that this is a problem and that this isn't just voluntary at this point. The other aspect that I'm very concerned about is the cost. If this is a $60 million project, that roughly becomes $315 million with repayment. That's a 30-year, 5% financing with costs. The difficulty is that for every EDU over 30 years, that would be $414,000. And per EDU per year, that would be $13,000. So if you have a typical home with one EDU, that's $13,800 per year. If you have a small commercial, that's $27,000 a year. If you have a medium commercial, that's $55,000 a year. And if you have a larger business with 6 EDUs in it, that's $83,000 a year. If you're a hotel with 22 EDUs, that is $304,000 a year. I am overwhelmingly concerned with our town. I love it. I truly do. And I think that us not having a sewer is a feature and not a flaw. Because right now, if anybody needs a sewer and you want to create a business, there are Solvent, Sandy Ynez, Fuelton, willing and ready. But the beauty of our town is the fact that we have built-in constraints with this system that we have now. If it's not causing red tags, we should continue. Because tearing up our streets, absolutely changing the fabric of this town. One of the things I'm concerned about, just even the people in this room, I'm one of the youngest ones. An additional $13,000 on every single person's tax bill will cause huge amounts of people to leave our community. And we are one generation, we are one problem away from everybody selling their house because I can't afford it anymore, and they move. And all of a sudden we have a total transfer of people into our town with people that want to change it. I love it. It's a feature and not a flaw. And I think we as a community, and I hope that you're hearing that from us, want you to look at every available opportunity. Doing nothing is a great choice. It's a great choice. And if it is at this point completely our decision because no one's getting red tagged, nobody's drinking bad water, then we should do nothing. Okay?
Thank you. Okay, next up is Anna Dot.
So I agree with speaker 1, 2, and 3.
You just up close.
Okay, so I agree with speakers 1, 2, and 3, completely. But what I wanted to talk about tonight is that I wrote 2 emails to you this evening, or earlier, yesterday, and then one today. And I just want to make sure that you guys have all had an opportunity to read both of those and to have your council weigh in on the one that I sent today, which basically talked about CEQA and the Brown Act violations that I believe you guys are going to be committing tonight if you move forward with items 7 and 8. That's all I really want to say until those items are called. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Purcell.
Good evening, Mark Riddell. I've been involved in this a long time, in and out, really helped fund the district, funded all the studies, so I was very involved in those days and wanted to make sure Los Libos have the ability to have these discussions here and not Santa Barbara or San Ynez. So thank you for what you guys do. I think you need to be clear with property owners in the areas of the district where your monitoring levels are showing 2, 4, and 6. That's well within drinking water standards. Most people aren't drinking this shallow aquifer water, but I think you need to be honest with them because they keep hearing the district say that the level is 1. That's a state planning objective, which is not attainable. Nowhere in the whole Tri-Counties will you find that in inhabitable areas. So please be honest with the people because it comes across as the objective is 1. It's a government objective. It's not attainable. You need to be very clear. Everybody needs to receive something in the mail with your proposed assessments for this project, for their individual parcel, so people understand the cost. You have a survey in there asking for feedback questions. The idea of assessing by acreage is flawed and dangerous for our town. You know, a home of the same size on a little bit bigger lot pays more. Doesn't make any sense. They're actually having less impact. I just calculated a little while ago that my family owns 8% of the district by acreage, 25 acres. We have 2 toilets and 1 septic tank on that acreage. I think I'd be paying about $5 million for this project for 2 flushing toilets. That would force me to sue the district with a really tough attorney because it just doesn't make sense. So please, or it would force me to sell the property to the developer, which is completely against what my family stands for. And then my role on the Polo board. Polo was formed 20-something years ago. Again, in 2023, we funded a grant to the district to study alternative collection and treatment options. Unfortunately, the technical committee excluded treatment options from that study. We were looking for the least invasive, lowest cost, least growth inducing local treatment option. You guys stuck with the $18 million plan. So we didn't have a true local treatment option that was feasible. We were disappointed. We continued that work with Regen a year ago. We just sent you that study. We plan to continue designing a system that will be more cost effective, can be scaled, and can address the areas of the district that have high nitrates. And if everybody wants to join into something like that, they should have the option to, but we shouldn't force it on people just because they happen to live in a district where we drew the boundaries. I was part of drawing the boundaries of the county. We covered the whole special problems area. It doesn't mean people in other parts of the district that do not want it, they shouldn't have to be forced into it just because our district has chosen that option. The solving option only works if everybody goes in, right? So I think we need to be honest with the community on that. If everybody wants to do it, fantastic. If people don't, they shouldn't be forced to because it is life changing for some people.
That's
and
fine.
as I mentioned, the Regen engineer will be available early August for you guys to ask some questions. All right.
Thank you. Dennis, Stevie. Oh, did he just speak? Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, board, for your service. I'm Dennis Beebe from Stallbank, but I consider myself a citizen of San Ynez Valley. I'm also the president of the Sending Nez Valley Citizens Council, which, among other organizations, is concerned about changing our way of life, our quality of life, our rural character. We sent a letter to the board a year ago, practically having an anniversary, where we objected to your consideration of options that you're reconsidering tonight. The two objections were, number one, we didn't think you gave the done option adequate study. As far as I know, your staff spent 10 days to consider it, gave you the data, and you made a decision based on that. That could have saved you $5 million in land acquisition costs, and the pipeline to Dunn would have been a half mile instead of the 3.4 miles that your current study is estimating. Second objection was your choice of a solvent pipeline, solvent treatment plant, violated provisions of your SYD community plan. My fingerprints were on that. Approved by the supervisors in 2009, it hasn't changed. It said, do not construct a sewer pipeline from Los Olivos to Solvang. It threatens future development. It enables future development. If you build it, you won't be here when they come. But if you authorize this construction, you're opening up development and loss of ag lands for over 3 miles. We objected then, we object now. Now you have an estimate from your contractor for 30% design review, very appropriate 30%. I think that's the plus or minus for the contractor's estimate for the construction costs, meaning they don't know what the construction costs are going to be at this point. Maybe will know better when they get to the 90% design review, but I have some experience with multi-million-dollar projects, and the more the design review find, the more the cost estimate goes up. I don't think this will be any different. So what I'd like to do is join the community and ask the board to pause in light of Polo-funded regional study. I'd like you to pause, evaluate another option, a local option, not a regional option, and reflect. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen Stein, someone.
Good job.
Thank you.
Dennis, most of my comments are about the beautiful brochure that you handed out at the workshop. So one of the questions in that brochure was, why not start with just the downtown area first? And the response was, the downtown multi-phase project costs more connection. All properties owners of the district would face assessments without immediate benefit. I live on Santa Barbara Avenue. I know test wells 1, 3, and 5 tested well below the thresholds of nitrogen. So there is no benefit needed for those of us on that side. The other one was, there is no viable site for a partial facility to only serve downtown. And as we've heard, I think that there is Dunn availability. By the way, I walk Dunn almost every day as a loop. You can't smell anything over there. You don't even know where that thing is. The other one was the community-wide approach is more equitable and cost-effective. Everyone connects, everyone benefits. Costs are shared proportionally across all 384 properties. Well, the fact of the matter is 384 properties don't need benefits for a solution. I mean, I am on a well and on septic. I'm a 3.5 acre property. I can continue to have a septic system. It's the size of my lot. I don't need a sewer. My water is fine. I have it tested all the time. There's no nitrates, there's no arsenic, there's no anything in that water that I would drink straight out of the well. All 384 houses do not have a septic problem. Larger properties have septic solutions, as I said. Most systems needing replacement, according to the document, are in residential areas in the district, not the commercial core. I would like to know where that data came from and how you can prove it, because I don't think this is a data-driven point at all. I don't even know how you would do that data. I don't know how you would do it, but I don't believe that to be true. Another part of that document was how will we pay for this project, right? And it's all about, taking that, whatever millions it is, divided by 30, divided by 340, 84, et cetera. Well, I asked them to look at the total cost to a property owner because Cell Bank has a 5-year increase plan for sewer. The smallest meter, 5/8 meter, at $93 a month, plus $5.05 per cent of cubic foot, which is $748, plus $91.87 for the sewer fee. So there's a lot more that's going to be assessed to a property owner than just putting in a system. And then there's a thing on the questions, which is about growth. And it said that Santa Barbara County governs what gets built here. However, the LOCSD, that's an important layer. The district must issue a can and will serve notice for any new construction in the district, confirming capacity exists before the projects move forward. So my question is, does that exist now? Because I was walking down past Kiana the other day, and for some reason they were putting into the storm drain, and then what's going to happen with the best project?
Thank you. Next up, Sam Arberstein.
Sam Arberstein, Los Olivos Cafe. I've lived here for like 31 years. I love this valley. I love the rural lifestyle. I don't want to see any massive development. But we've been trying to get sewage here for 31 years. And now the board's been doing this for 8 years. It's been so long. People that don't want sewers keep diverting the conversation. Well, we could do it done, or we need more studies, or here's another shiny new idea. Let's study that. Well, they've been studying all this. It's not anything new for 8 years. 8 years have been studying this. Our business has been struggling with constant pumping all the time. We've been here 31 years, serving the community, but it's getting very difficult for us. Let's remember why we're here. We're here because the state is mandating that we put sewers in. If we don't do it with our control, they'll come in and they'll do it their way. That is number one. Number two is if you're a property owner in downtown Los Olivos and your septic fails, you're looking at a $90,000 advanced treatment system in cash. No loans. Here, come up with it, or you don't have a septic system anymore. So we're up against the wall. Something's got to be done. So what I say is, let's move forward with the gravity-fed sewer system of Sawbang and let the voters of the district decide. It still has to come up for a vote. If you don't like it, and the people who live here don't like it, they can vote no. We don't want it. But let the people that have homes in the district, the properties in the district, let them vote. Let's move forward and let's decide. Thank you.
We have two other people. I'm not sure if we wanted to do general comment. Lisa, oh, I'm gonna mispronounce your last name. Okay. Was it for general or specific agenda item? It's the same thing. Okay, here you go.
Should just go over here. Easy to remember. Again, thanks to the board for your service. As longtime homeowners and members of the community who are impacted and do have the right to vote, just want to say that we are 100% pro-gravity fed sewer and in favor of the board moving forward as proposed. We want sewer, full stop. We urge the board not to be influenced by those who've been mounting a fear and smear campaign, some of whom with the loudest voices don't even have the right to vote. And just for the record, we love the community too.
Thank you. Last one, Mike Brady. Do you want to do public, this one or specific item?
So, this item.
Okay.
You know, I appreciate all of my neighbors and my friends for showing up and for everybody having different ideas. But that's what we're all about. That's what discussion is all about. I've been coming to these meetings for some years now. And I also will go back a little bit further. When I first came to the Valley, when you're speaking of growth and nobody wants growth, St. Mark's wasn't here. The building on the corner wasn't here. The sides building was boarded up. There was a gallery where there's now a wine tasting room. Where Sam's restaurant is, there was a butcher shop. Bottom line is since I've been here, this community has grown double, if not triple. So to say we're going to stop growth by stopping a sewer system just is unrealistic and ridiculous. I know Keith mentioned nobody's getting red tagged. Well, nobody's getting red tagged, Keith, because the county is not applying the rules that exist. You have to have a 2.5 acre property today to have a septic system. And if they were to apply the rules, they've given us forbearance because we are trying to reach a solution. And they have given us forbearance because we are doing that. If we stop the process and say, we're done, we don't have a problem, they will start implementing their rules. And if your system fails, you're going to be subject to a $60,000 to $75,000 advanced treatment system to replace it. So anyway, I'm just saying, we've come this far. I believe we need to have a system, and I believe the safest, most assured system is a sewer system. It will not induce growth to have a district-controlled and owned and sized pipeline going to Solvang, so that we don't have to deal with the ongoing costs of maintaining the treatment system. So anyway, it's a tough issue, and we will be coming to the point of a vote when we know the actual costs and figures, and at that point, you can make a decision. But at this point, to say, let's just stop, we don't have a problem, I think that's fantasy.
Thank you. So again, just a reminder, if you would like to comment on any of the other agenda items, we're asking that you please complete a card up at the front there and bring it up to us. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is General Manager Brief District Status Report. Okay, I think. All right, moving on to next item, the consent agenda. So for the first off, do we have any public comment on the consent agenda?
I didn't fill out the thing. I have a question.
Okay. So, well, just to remind you, just if it's a question, if it's something we can answer.
I understand, Bronna.
Thank you.
So we have a consent agenda approving an awful lot of dollars, and yet the finance committee hasn't done it since last year. So how is that?
Thank you. Can I get a motion, or is there any discussion, questions for General Manager on the consent agenda?
I have one, actually, sorry, since I had a question, sorry about that. There's no invoice. I emailed and asked for an invoice for the printing of the brochure that was distributed. And the response I got was, we didn't print it and the consultant didn't print it. So I don't know if Jesus printed it, but if we could see an invoice, that would be amazing. It was free. There's no invoice. It just was printed for free. Okay, wow, that's interesting. I don't know, Jesus.
So here's my comment on the consent agenda is, and I talked to General Manager about this, I just think it doesn't fairly characterize the role of council in the motion or this resolution we have at 26-4, where Director Fairham, he made a motion that did not pass, did not get a second. And then we went on and had some other discussions. And then unprompted council came and basically worded a way that we could have this resolution going forward without any board member asking him for that. And I talked to the general manager after the meeting, because it really bothered me that without any of our questions on how we could word it, he just interjected. And I just thought that that really wasn't appropriate, and that this resolution really shouldn't have been part of this meeting. So that's my input on the consent agenda.
Any other comments? Yeah, so yes. Carly, item 7.
Well, it was just the consent agenda, just the way it was characterized in the minutes. It wasn't exact. So that was my comment.
Okay.
So it wasn't on the resolution. It was on how we got to the resolution, and that is part of the consent agenda minutes.
Do you want to make a correction on the minutes?
I don't know if that helps, but that's his purpose on that part of the record. I can't do it, I'm sorry. I can't do it. I don't know if we need to amend the minutes, but I think part of the public record that is my concern with how this resolution was developed.
So the comment was really about the minutes. So when I asked if
It's up to the board if they want to amend the minutes.
that's what I asked you, what would you like to amend the minutes?
Minutes reflect what happened, but yeah, it's up to the board to make that decision.
And I didn't get it. And yes, I mean, right now it would be hard to go through the whole thing to
Can we exclude the minutes from the consent agenda and bring it back after amendment? Okay. Do that.
Are you back next month?
Yeah. Okay. So would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So, if I may, just approve item 6B and don't approve 6A, direct the staff bring it back.
Okay. Do you want to make that motion?
You wanted it.
Yeah, I make a motion
Yeah, you're gonna approve.
that we approve
Okay.
6A, not 6B, or no, 6B, not 6A. And direction staff to bring it back for the next meeting.
There we go. We have a motion.
I'm sorry, I don't see the 6A, I see a 7A, B, and C. Okay. Well, that's the minutes from last week. Okay. All right, got it. I was looking.
We have a motion. Somebody like to give a second?
Oh, I'll second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Roll call.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Roll call.
Director Parks. Director Fairham. Director Nelson.
Aye.
President Kennedy.
Aye.
Vice President Palmer.
Aye.
Director Palmer, thank you. All those doing that.
Hey, well. Don't worry about that.
Okay. All right, moving on to item 7. Again, just want to remind everyone, if you would like to comment on item 7, please fill out a card. Again, we have a lot of people commenting, so if even if you're not sure you want to comment, please fill out a card. Like I said, we're going to try to keep this moving along. So we're only going to address the comments for the public comments from people who put a card in. All right, so first up, Mark Crisbell.
Yeah, on this item, I wasn't at the public workshop. But I read some of the notes and I know the technical committee or Director Fairham has been pretty pro-gravity the whole time. I don't know if I'm pro-gravity or effluent or not, but I do want to make sure the community has accurate information on both options. Regen pointed out that, I think in your Wallace report, the cost per linear foot for effluent sewer directional boring, I think was 4 to 5 times the cost he got from Ventura Drilling Company. So if you could just get back to us with why is the Wallace report showing a 5x cost increase over what your previous studies showed? Today I drove through Napomo. They're putting their gravity lines down the street. I got video of it from today in Napomo. It is a torn up mess. This weekend I was up at Lake Tahoe, and they're directionally drilling right down highway, whatever the highway is that goes around the lake. And there's little concrete or little holes every 100 yards or so where they got that boring, and they've been going right down the highway. A lot less disruptive. I think the people in this business community that rely on tourism should make sure they understand the disruption to the town. And again, the mailer that went out as part of this, or whatever the handout, reading through that, it's worded to get people to move in the right direction. The fact that the district's saying that hooking up everybody at the same time is cheaper, and you can't just hook up to downtown because everybody will have to pay. There's something called zones of benefit, which were in the founding studies for this district from Richard Burks and Associates that show you can assess different areas based on benefit. So you could do a smaller phase one if folks on that side of the district decided they didn't want to be part of the study. So again, there's a lot of facts. Some of us know a lot of facts. Some of us don't know a lot of facts. Some of us think we know a lot of facts, but some of them may be in the room, me included. But this is a really important thing to get right for people, and it needs to be full transparency for everybody because everybody's on the hook here. So full transparency and not agenda, because it's, again, the agenda, I think, is clouding some of the potential information.
Chairman, President. Go ahead. You may offer Mr. Hertel to say something again in a few minutes. You really should do the staff report before you have for public comment.
Sorry.
Sorry. You can. One, I will.
I'm sorry. I just want something. I just want to make sure we didn't miss anybody. Apologize, everyone.
Staff would like to advise the board that we revise the resolution that was passed to this item. A copy of that resolution is in front of you. And it's also available for the public at the table. Thank you.
Yeah, if you didn't hear that, there's a copy of the resolution in the back if you wanted to take a look at that. All right, I'm sorry.
That's all right. So I'm just trying to give some people may want to respond to what's in the staff report. So I just want to make sure we're not having a recording.
Mark, we'll give you another chance if you want to after the staff report.
I'll let you hand me the mic. I probably don't need it, but just in case.
Yes.
You never on that.
All right, so we're going to be talking about Resolution 2604, as council noted. This did have some modifications to it. There's copies in the back, and the board has one. So there's a number of things terminology-wise that I wanted to remind people of, just because I think it often gets confused when we start talking about gravity and step and gravity and pressurized and all that sort of stuff. So I tried to put this in words, and then on the next slide, there's a little bit of a picture. These are the same ones that I used last month. So for those of you who were here before, you're hearing this again. For those who weren't here, I think it's good to make sure we're all talking the same language. So when I use the word collection, and the board uses the word collection, and the resolution uses the word collection, that's what happens within the district, meaning from your home or business to a main line that goes through the district. Once we get to the bottom of the district, that's where conveyance starts. So we're going to convey from the district 3.5 miles to the park, where it'll join the city's system. So we talk about both of those as both pressurized and unpressurized. One of them could be pressurized and the other one not pressurized, and vice versa. Okay. So when we talk about STEP, which is one way of collecting wastewater from homes and businesses, that's a pressurized system. When we talk about gravity, that's the one most people are the most familiar with, it seems. Just a gravity fed pipe comes out of a home or a business, goes to the street, and then is carried via gravity to basically to where it joins up to the conveyance line. On the conveyance side, we can do gravity or we can do pump. So either of those options apply in both ways. As I mentioned last month, and the board gave me some direction related to things like utilization tanks, and can we do, in particular, gravity conveyance down to solvent? And the answer is yes. So from an engineering perspective, you could do
step in the district, and then gravity, or gravity in the district, and then gravity all the way to Solvang. Now, why is that important? There's a couple of areas where being able to do gravity is helpful, particularly if the entire system is gravity. It means that we can eliminate all lift stations. So we would not have any lift stations between basically our homes or get pipe down to where we meet up with the city of Solvang near Sunfield Park. So you could do that from an engineering perspective. There are a couple of small things we have to verify with the county. They don't seem overly difficult to get by. Part of that whole point about doing gravity the whole way is obviously that's a cheaper solution, right? Station, which includes pumps and collection areas underground, costs money. And then you have electric to run a pump and backup generators and all sorts of stuff, right? So it is a cheaper approach. And we now, based on Wallace Group efforts, understand that it's technically feasible. So that's something that the board can talk about as well. A brief bit of history here. So previously with, let me start with the right-hand side of this picture, which is the picture itself. So up in the upper right-hand corner, that's the district kind of in blue. That's the collection side of things. And then as soon as you get to the bottom of the district, that's the conveyance line that basically follows Alamo Pintado until you get down to right near Sunfield Park, more technically the dentist's office, if you know where that is. It's not actually right by the park, it's a little bit further from that. So a little bit of history around this, just to, again, because I recognize that people would be here that may not have the full history of things. So a little over a year ago, the board passed resolution 2501 that basically said, figure out action step or gravity, focused pretty heavily on, at the time, pressurized conveyance to Solvang, where waste would be treated and disposed. In last October, the board signed a contract with the Wallace Group to do 30, 60, 90% design contract to examine that stuff, right? Whether gravity or STEP as a collection approach. And because the prior work, the gravity had been completed by Stantec, the STEP estimates have been done by Regen, clearly two very different approaches to how you estimated. The board said, no, let's just have one contractor do both sides. We do kind of an apples to apples comparison. And in order to do that, the board voted to spend an extra $90,000 so that they didn't really have to choose at the time between STEP and gravity. They have some apples to apples comparison. So now, as of May, 1st of June, essentially, we have that 30% design and 30% or 30-year ownership, cost of ownership information. I'll share some more of that in just a minute. And the intent all along has been that we would make some selection at some point as far as collection was concerned. And the Wallace Group would take that one collection approach, whether STEP or gravity, into 60% design. I suppose if you wanted to spend quite a bit more money, they could take both, but I think the board decided previously this would be the point. Since we had the conversation, or since the Wallace Group turned in their first 30% design, 30-year ownership, cost of ownership documents, we had the workshop on June 3rd and the June 10th board meeting where the board gave us direction to look into some of these things, which is part of it led us to being able to understand whether or not gravity all the way from the district to Solvang was possible. I'll add this one as well, just because I think it's important for people to remember some of the things we have done. We've held a number of workshops. So this is a recap of the January 2023 workshop, where people said, this is what's most important to us. Now, I understand that people say, well, that wasn't a scientific thing, that we just surveyed the people that were in the room. I agree. But they were the people who showed up and voiced their opinions and told us what they wanted. So this reflects however many people were in the room. And I think it reflects many of our thoughts. So first and most important to people was, what's the capital cost? We're working on getting those numbers. What's the cost of operations and maintenance? Two sort of different things, but it was cost and cost. At the time this workshop was held, we were also talking a lot about where to site the treatment plant within the district and how we would do disposal. So location of those things was very important to people. The discussion around STEP was well underway, and people had some concerns about ownership, maintenance, and responsibility of the particular STEP systems. here we are again, as we talked about earlier tonight, potential for growth inducement was the fifth item on the list. Treatment, footprint and size was important to people, potential for odor, and then shed impacts. By connecting to solving, about 4 of these pretty much go away, not entirely, we'll be there, but you're not worried about where to locate the sewer system, you're not worried about treatment plant's footprint or size. The potential for odor goes way down because you won't have a treatment plant in the district, and everything's essentially underground, so you don't have shed impacts at the same level. So the project description based on direction from board last month was rewrite it, focused on gravity as the collection mechanism. At the time, no direction was given related to conveyance, so that's still kind of open, meaning no decision yet on whether or not to go gravity or pressurized still. I would say that I would encourage your board to hold on just a little longer until we finish the conversation with the county and some others related to putting the gravity lines on the bridge, because while we think it's certainly very technically feasible, the county may have something to say about that. I suspect they'll be open to what we would have to propose, but until I've got some sort of confirmation, I would want to have you make a vote on that. I mentioned some of this already, so gravity conveyance to solving is possible. It doesn't require lift stations. The equalization tank, which we also talked about last month, that's a requirement, not even a requirement, I would say, from the city of Solving. That's still unanswered and unresolved at this point. In talking to some folks, there may be some real benefit if an equalization tank is required, potentially placing it somewhere closer to Solving, then they could use that same tank / basin for controlling their own flows, not just our flows. Given that we're probably less than 10% the total that gets processed by the city of Solving at any given day, trying to control 10% and leaving the other 90% effectively uncontrolled, there may be some benefit to them if we place that elsewhere. And then, as I mentioned a minute ago, we still need more discussion on the bridge. So I recognize and apologize to everyone. This is a bit of an eye chart. This is straight out of the Wallace Group report. It's the same one that's out there. On the left is scenario 1, which is gravity collection and pump conveyance. That was what they were primarily focused on at the time. And on the right, step collection and, again, pump conveyance to solving. So you can see some of the pros and cons here. I'm not going to go through these. These were walked through at the workshop very briefly by me last month as well, but they'll be in this presentation, which we posted online. Jumping to cost, this was the cost that Wallace Group identified for gravity collection and pump conveyance. Scenario 1 there being kind of the first column there, and scenario 2 being the second one. You can see the various costs, in particular the construction capital cost is a big difference there. 51 million is the calculated construction cost for gravity collection, and 38.6 for step. The whole EDU thing, I'm not going to go too far down that, other than just to say they did some calculations to attempt to assign EDU, meaning an equivalent dwelling unit, to businesses and homes, and then they, based on that number of EDUs, divided the number there in row A, capital cost, and just did a simple math. I think importantly, these next 2 lines are the ones that many people are focused on, and that's this whole question around what's the initial cost for an owner of a property to connect to the sewer, meaning what do they have to pay out of their pocket, because this is stuff, this installation of, for instance, laterals, abandoning septic tanks, that sort of thing. So 16.4 was the calculated cost for gravity, and depending upon whether you're a business or a home, it varied pretty widely here. 39,200 if you're a resident was the calculated cost for step, meaning again 39,000 coming out of each individual property owner's pocket to connect, and for businesses 856. And the reason for the larger amount is larger tanks, additional things, maybe for instance in the case of a restaurant, grease traps and other things that would have to be put in place to make it function correctly. The other thing that we asked Wallace Group to look at, and they provided to us, was this concept of 30-year property owner cost being over 30 years related to the construction and installation of a system. What would it cost? So over 30 years for the construction side, based on the EU calculation they did, gravity was about $88,000 and step was just over $97,000. So about a $10,000 difference. On the commercial side, again, you got to remember they've got things like grease traps and larger connections, so on and so forth. About $400,000, $436,000 over 30 years, compared to $422 per step, so slightly cheaper in that case per step. So that's what is in the Wallace Group report. It's been posted on our website. It's in a number of places. It's on our page for studies and such. You can also go to the workshop. These slides will be posted with tonight's on the same page as tonight's agenda. A similar set was posted for last month's agenda. So I've been asked this question a number of times, so I wanted to did the calculations on this. And for the purposes of this, I picked 2 data points. I had to come up with something, right? So in California, there's an annual construction cost index that's calculated. Basically, it's how much does it cost to construct something, each year, and how much more expensive is it the next year. So the average annual cost since the district was formed is a little over 5%, 5.4%, to be more specific. Since the pandemic started, 6.8%, so quite a bit bigger. And you kind of see my little note here, just because people say, well, that's too far back or whatever. 2025 was just under 4%. So, yes, it's up and down, but it's a real number. It doesn't track directly with CPI because construction is a different animal. It doesn't always follow exactly where CPI went, but often it's driven by things like fuel costs and other things. So, and the way this always gets asked me is, well, what's it cost if we wait another year or another 2 years? And you can kind of do the math. And so that's what I've done here. If you take and assume this $60 million is larger than the numbers that the Wallace Group was using, but I think would be a fair cost for what it would cost if you include the cost for things they'll have to do, connecting, solving, and so on. Simple math at that point, 5.4% is $3.2 million, 6.8% is a little over $4 million. If you get down to each parcel, now this isn't EU, this is, divided by 375, 384 rather, costs about $9,000 per year per parcel for delay, and then you can look at it from a monthly perspective and a per parcel month perspective. I brought that up just because, again, this is one of the questions that I get asked all the time. Well, why don't we just wait? We'll do this in 10 years. Well, you've got to add those costs because they continue to grow. All right, timing, this is kind of looking at the problem from a different perspective. On this, you can see we've got kind of the phase 1 of the Wallace Group, the 30% sun dying, 30-year cost of ownership. Some sort of collection assessment or selection rather was expected. In the June meeting, we're now at the red bar here where the July meeting is. So as what this is kind of showing is we're a little bit behind now, right? If we're at the red line and the Wallace Group should already be working on 60% design, then we're a little bit behind, about a month. Until we have some of these other pieces in place, the work related to the solving contract has not begun. Early work on environmental has been completed, but not a lot. They're mostly waiting for some decisions from us before they get too far along, right? Things like, do you have lift stations or not have lift stations are an impact that they'll have to research from a CEQA perspective. We have had conversations, but we have not hired an assessment engineer. And for those who aren't familiar with that term, an assessment engineer is the person that will take all of the costs that are calculated and then assign it based on board decision and public input as far as how to allocate costs. There are various things that the board has talked about. We spent, I think, 3 different months worth of meetings talking about different ways to look at this problem. Lot size, use, zoning, those were all things that were in the mix. And then we've got these other contracts going on. So to wrap up the staff report and hand it back to the board for initial comments, public comments on. Recommendation is to consider decisions on both collection and conveyance. Again, I would caution you against going too far in conveyance because there's still some more information we need there, particularly around the utilization tanks and the location of those. Consider approving resolution 2604. I think as I look at that and what council has reworked here, The decision is the important part. The resolution is kind of secondary to that, meaning the decision as to how to collect and then giving Wallace Group direction on how to proceed is more important than, I think, than the actual resolution itself, just the way to memorialize it. So I would tell you, those are the things that your board is tasked with, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and put it back to, we'll do public comment first, then we'll bring it back to the board. So Marcus, would you like to, sorry.
Sorry, I'm but thanks for the presentation, Guy. Just looking at the numbers that you got up on the STEP system, the 39,200 per home. It looks like, so those systems, they cost $8,000 for the actual system. Takes about a day and a half to 2 days to install one. It's kind of like replacing a septic tank, except it's a lot easier because they don't deal with leach field. There's no leach field. So this number, if the district got behind a program instead of having everybody on their own, you could bring that down a lot. So that's one comment on that. And then the other one, for the last year or two, you guys have been talking about pressurized conveyance to solving, because pressurized won't allow people to hook in along the way. And now I'm hearing we're talking about gravity to solving. And then I heard that Chip Wolbrant this week mentioned that, well, maybe the Board of Supervisors will just tie Ballard in along the way. So Joan, our supervisors here, I don't know if that's accurate, but I'm just wondering where that gravity now, where people can hook in along the way, came in, because people think they've lived here a long time when they lived here 20 years, but they weren't here during the period of the community plan. And the community plan that Mr. Beebe spoke about, which Supervisor Hartman has called her Bible to me before, specifically said, do not run sewer lines through these rural townships, because this rural township that you guys moved to will start to look like where you moved from, where everything runs together. Because where you run sewer lines, development can happen. So it's cute. And Sam, where you live in Oregon, most of the time, these step systems are very common. That's where they're developed. So,
Oregon, I live there.
all right, sounds good. Thank you. So I just want to make sure the facts are right. If the district was behind a step system that may be cheaper, more importantly, where's the protection, Supervisor Hartman, running all the way to Solvang now with a gravity pipe that anybody can tap into along the way? And maybe the county who's funding this study, maybe the county's going to require something bigger. Yeah, I'm just seeing a regional solution. I'm seeing rural San Ynez Valley going down the road because of a couple of little areas in Los Olivos where we're just about drinking water quality. That's scary. That's insane. And that's dangerous. And we should not be believing everything we hear just because someone that works for the government tells us that that's the fact. I'm picking up BS, and I'm glad I haven't attended these meetings because it's not good for your health. All right, thanks. Mike, get into that.
Yeah.
Got a Christmas letter for me right now?
Maybe.
All right, we have next up, Catherine Rohr. Thank you.
Hi. So you have both my letter about the CEQA violations that you will kick into action if you adopt this resolution. You're committing to a pipeline to Solvang. You have passed that tipping point for CEQA purposes, and you need a full environmental review. You need to have studied alternative alignments, alternative technologies, alternative siting options, and again, Dunn School, they're there waiting for you. They're still at the table. And you've not done that. You haven't done it. And your neighbors here asserting that you have, it's simply not true. You've discussed it and you've dismissed it, but you've never studied it. Polo is paid to study it. So I encourage you to get on task. CEQA is not a joke. It's not a game. It's not something you're supposed to skirt. Very much like that terrifically problematic brochure that got printed for free by whom we don't know, but it was developed by your 218 committee, and it's a pro 218 piece. It violates multiple laws and exposes you to liability, but you just keep forging ahead. And you keep putting so much spin on this thing. And what I want to ask you sincerely Why do you have to put so much spin on this project? Why can't you just disclose to people the costs? I'm not out of time yet. There are costs not just for the construction. It would save you over your 90,000 advanced onsite because you're going to be paying for your lateral, you're going to be paying for construction, you're going to be paying Solving's O&M. And so you would be getting a bargain with an advanced onsite at this point. And the last point, in fairness, you guys did for months tell us that the pressurized main to Solving was our protection against people tapping in, and now you just want to run a gravity main, which really is in direct contravention of the community plan. But additionally, I keep hearing, oh no, we won't let people tap in. That's not the point. The point is, when this project goes over budget, grossly over budget, not if, when it does, you, good people of the board, are going to have tremendous incentive. All these kind of people in this room are going to have tremendous incentive to vote to rope as many additional parcels into this thing as possible to pay for this outrageously overpriced project. So the development will happen not because we want development, but because we have to distribute the cost. That's how it happens. That's what happens with sewer lines. And so again, lastly, you all get a vote. You get a vote because you're a commercial owner. You get a grossly disproportionately weighted vote. We know that if all the homeowners in the entire community voted against this plan, the Solving plan, it would still pass if the commercial core voted for it. It's fine. Talk to Guy Savage. He's the one who put up the flag. So just so you're aware, your vote doesn't count.
Next up is Patricia God.
No, later.
Oh, okay, not 7, okay.
I will.
Okay, then Anna Marie God.
So I'm just here today to demand that basic transparency, fiscal responsibility, and immediate legal compliance from this board. Moving forward with resolution 2604 tonight represents a blatant Brown Act violation. It directly ignores the open meeting and transparency evidence detailed in a recent formal letter that I sent to the district attorney. The Brown Act explicitly requires that the public be given a meaningful, legally noticed opportunity to review and comment on major project alternatives before the board commits to a binding project description. You haven't done that. By intentionally keeping the region study off tonight's agenda, you are actively suppressing public data and denying citizens their legal right to open governments. Furthermore, the Wallace Group plan before you relies on a baseline capitalization cost estimated of $40 to $60 million. This number is a dangerous economic illusion. A deep dive into the Wallace Group's own 30% design reveals that it completely hides the true long-term financial costs that will land on our monthly sewer bills. Their figures entirely fail to budget for our community's share of upgrading Solving's overcapacity municipal pipe segments. It provides zero cost estimates for dewatering our area's notoriously high seasonal groundwater tables during deep gravity trenching. It completely ignores local road damage repairs, macroeconomic construction inflation, and astronomical compounding interest for 30-year amortization loan. In stark contrast, Regent's feasibility study delivered to you on June the 26th offers a local decentralized alternative utilizing a shallow effluent pressurized network. It estimates total capitalization cost of $30 to $33 million. When you accurately factor in millions of dollars in omitted costs hidden by the Wallace Group pipeline plan, the region study represents less than half the true financial burden to our community. You have a fiduciary duty to protect local homeowners from financial ruin. Pushing this resolution through tonight while suppressing a cheaper, safer alternative violates both the public's trust and California law. I demand that the board's resolution 26-04 be removed immediately. Do not take another step forward until you schedule a formal public hearing where both studies can be evaluated side by side.
Thank you, that's fine. Next up, we have Vivi Ziegler.
My husband and I have lived, I think Mark called us newbies or something like that. We've only lived in the district for 16 years. We are voting property owners. And we still care, even 16 years, we still care a lot about the town, how it is now, how it will be in the future. Our grandchildren live nearby. We care about all of that. We are also deeply appreciative of the board and its work, and we're highly embarrassed when insults are thrown at you in public or in private. We're embarrassed, and we don't think that's a proper way to conduct a meeting or to treat our board. We voted by a significant majority for this CSD, and we will, as many have said, vote on the Proposition 218 when it comes up, and it will pass or it won't. We're counting on the board. We don't want to spend a dime. Nobody wants to spend any money on a sewer. I mean, that's crazy. Who does? But we think we're going to have to spend it one way or another. And we feel pretty strongly that us controlling it is a better chance at hopefully transparency. And I couldn't support more everybody that's calling for that. But also the chance to control. We have friends in Los Osos. We know what happened there. We've heard all about the horrors that they went through when they didn't do anything on their own and what the county did to them. We want to move forward. We wanted to move forward when we voted for the district to be formed. So we're waiting, and we don't want to keep sidelining on, there's always going to be something else to look at. We get that. We don't want you to put your heads in the sand, of course. Nobody does. But we also know you can't do that over and over and over again and never get anywhere, not just because the slide of the cost and increases year over year, but because we want a solution that we can all be done with this. No one wants the streets torn up. Who does? We don't want that. We feel really fortunate that we have solving as an option. We are so glad that we will not, as a small district, have to support and find incredibly talented and experienced water engineers to come here and do this for us, and people not currently on staff to deal with regulations, changing requirements from the government. That seems such an onerous and duplicative process that seems ridiculous. We want their experience. We want their know-how. We want everything they've learned, all the mistakes they've made we'd like not to make on our own. We also feel that gravity is the right way to go in both from the home to the street and beyond. We feel gravity is the best. There's a lot of information out there about gravity. Gravity's been out there for years for a reason. We were thrilled to hear that there may be some cost savings versus some of the estimates we've already seen based on the testing that was done in true gravity form. Am I time, Julie?
You're on it.
Okay, so I just wanted to say thank you for the work you're doing. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. If anybody has any questions, comments, etc.
Okay. So I think what we hear is there are different viewpoints and different opinions. What's bothersome to me is if I don't agree with you, then my opinion is wrong. And that's really troublesome. We've done a lot of work on this. I've spent 8 years, I think I just calculated 12% of my life on this, because I do want to do the right thing. I wouldn't have ran for this board if I didn't want to do the right thing. We've spent a lot of time and money to get to this point. In fact, we contracted with Wallace to look at stuff, side by side, instead of someone else's report against someone else's report. We're looking at, trying to make this close to an apples to apples. regarding solving, we made that decision, I think back in September. And so it's kind of the question about was solving, still an issue or not. The board made that decision. I believe it was unanimous that we made that decision. And for a lot of good reasons. And I'm happy to talk with anybody about the good reasons I've heard for that. For one, I talked to a lot of, I'm a registered engineer, so I have contemporaries. I talked to a bunch of them. The county, which I retired from, operates from. They actually operate two. They operate the chip. I didn't find one who said, own your own sewer treatment plant. That's a really good idea. It's better to consolidate. Now, the other thing that's kind of missing in a lot of this dialogue is we have had dialogue with the regional board in the county for a long time. And a lot of the issues that are being brought up, I encourage you to contact the regional board. In fact, we got a letter too from the regional board that we distributed that talks about the consequences of not doing something. Yet we still seem to think whether or not doing something is a discretionary option or not. I've got so many contradictions from tonight in the past that I'm not going to go forward in. I think I'm going to leave it with, we had a workshop where we had a vast majority of the community weigh in on what they wanted, and that was gravity to solve. And we're all going to have differences of opinions. I respect, I don't know, Mr. Hurdell is still in the room. Right, Tom? I've had a lot of discussions with you, Mark, and I appreciate that. We have different viewpoints, and I'd like to continue that. We tried to connect before this report came out. Unfortunately, we didn't, but my door is always open to talk to you. I respect your opinion, and I hope you respect mine. To that end, I'm prepared to move forward with this because, as it was mentioned, let's let the people decide. Let's let the people who are going to pay this, they can make that decision and then move on. And if it passes, fine. If it doesn't, fine. We have threats of litigation now that I've heard, council. So for all the good people in the room, you can, I don't know how you would take that. Your will is being questioned. And I would just, again, leave it with Wallace evaluated the options, and we're at the point now to make the decision. That's what we explicitly set out to do. And we got that information in front of us. We selected Wallace on a qualifications basis, and they've now done the report. And so now we just have to tell them where to go. So I'll be prepared to support the resolution.
Well, I don't think we're ready. To have this resolution, I'm not ready to support it at this point. I think there's still too many questions between gravity versus step. I think the Wallace report, yes, we compared them. I think that they don't have a lot of experience with step, and I think that they overrepresent a lot of the costs. I also, we're not sure about lift stations. We're not sure about equalization tanks with step versus gravity. Those are both could be huge expenses that could be eliminated with step. So I don't think I'm willing to make a decision in favor of one versus the other. If money were not a concern, I think they're both very valid ways to go. But I do believe that, at least initially, the capital outlay is going to be a lot more for gravity versus step. And step, I think, is a lot more flexible in what it can do. I think the infrastructure in town is going to be much less disrupted with step. But I would like to know more about the lift stations and equalization with gravity before I am willing to select one collection system over the other.
I'm sorry, there was one major point I wanted to also add in there, and that is an option with decentralized treatment plants. We don't know what that would cost or what that would look like, and I don't know how many people, we've heard lots of people say they don't want that near them. We would have multiple of those. From a growth perspective, are you kidding me? If we have multiple checkerboard sites of small treatment plants serving an area, that checkerboard can grow outward anywhere. To me, that's a huge growth alternative. Because the treatment capacity now is unlimited. Just add another module. Go up the hill, add another module. Go out towards Dunn, add a module, couple modules. Go to Solvang, add more modules. There's your growth inducement right there. They can stand alone. You're gonna chop up the district and have a standalone thing. You can just add another piece to the checkerboard all around Los Olivos. That really scares me.
Promised my wife I wouldn't talk too much tonight, but you know how that goes. I went on the trip to Oregon and I saw the step system in Oregon, and I was very, very impressed. The difference between them and us is they also have a treatment plant, and they have staff that run that. The district owns all the equipment, and the district operates all the equipment. The homeowner has zero responsibility for maintaining it. That's not what we're looking at here, because their community was open to putting those tanks and systems in public right of ways. That can't happen here. It's not possible. I have spent the time on this board learning a lot about the systems, and I've learned I'm looking for what the community needs and wants. What's going to be best for the community, not what I like the best. Because if it was up to me, I do it a certain way and I go with it, because I'm not worried about it. But I look at these two options. And the thing I'm looking at is down the road a long way. Most people with a gravity system, it's a flush it and forget it. It's gone. They're not doing anything else unless you have some kind of an obstruction in your lateral. And then you call the plumber. Or you snake it yourself if you're good enough at it. But with the step system, you've got the financial responsibility for it under what this plan is. And I'm concerned now that long-term cost is going to come from the homeowner, not from the district. The maintenance on the lines of a gravity system are on the district. If you all wanted to give yourselves easements for all your property and just grant them without any kind of problems, then the step system might be more practical. But you're not doing that, and you won't do that, because I've heard from several people that they don't want people coming on their property. Well, the only way to avoid that is have it off your property and the district own it. So there's a conundrum right there. I was a strong believer, and I still do believe in the step system. I like it, but it's not about me. It's about the community and what's going to be best for them. As far as I'm concerned, I'm ready now to support the resolution, because that's what everybody that has communicated with me has said they want. And like I said, it's not about me, it's about you. It's about what you want. And you've seen it all. We've got the information up there, and we have looked at every particular option we have. Now, I understand the Regen one just came through, but we didn't run that study. We didn't finance that study. It was done outside of the district. And there was supposed to be a meeting by that group to share that with the community. It's not our responsibility to come and do that. We've read it. I've seen it. I don't see a whole lot of difference between that study and the Wallace study, other than some numbers. We don't know what any of the numbers are going to be, because until you start doing a construction project, you won't know. You're going to have a contingency allowance, because it's all going to be different. You're going to ballpark it, and we can ballpark it. We've tried the best we can to put it where we think it'll be. From that point on, nobody's going to pin it down to a single dollar and cents. I'm now going to deviate and go to the treatment plant. You really understand what goes along with a treatment plant? You're talking not just the land, but the construction of it, the maintenance of it, the personnel involved in it, the insurance you need for worker comp. And think about it, we're a small community. I spent 50 years in law enforcement. It is a known fact. Cops will go and start working at the smallest agency they can get onto, so they can get hired and have their foot in the door. And after that, as soon as they get it, they're moving up. And the same thing's going to happen with a technician working on a system here. So you have to be ready for them to continually move on, and you continually search for a new technician. And we aren't going to have a whole staff of them, because you can't afford it. So you go beyond the salary, you talk insurance, retirement, worker comp, insurance, all kinds of things. So the best thing we can do is let Solving handle that problem, and we contract for what we're going to do. We're not to the other part of the conveyance. We have a couple options. We're right now talking about collection. So going off looking at conveyance is to me a folly. We're dealing with collection at the moment. Thank you.
Director Palmer, did you have questions, or would you like to make a comment?
Yeah,
Still
I'll
there?
make a comment. I'll make a couple comments. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that a yes? So thank you. So just my colleagues have made several points that I was going to cover. So in the interest of brevity, I'll skip that. I will say, since the June 10th board meeting, I've spent a considerable amount of time talking with neighbors and folks in the community, asking them about what they want to do, what their preferences are. You know, we've seen the data. We have the Wallace Group report. We've made the decision on Solving, as we referenced earlier. So overwhelmingly, I'm hearing gravity. So I think I'm hearing two things: gravity, and let's get it to a vote. Right? I think this board's done great work in terms of assessing, getting studies done, allowing for public comment, workshops, whittling. You know, it's complex. There's a lot of trade-offs, but I think at this point in time, I'm in favor of moving forward with the resolution, select gravity, and move forward with the design, getting it to the 218 property owner vote. So I'm prepared to support the resolution.
Thank you, Director Palmer. I'm just going to make a really quick comment. I just want for everybody in this room to understand that for me personally, I was elected by this community to serve on this board to find the solution that works for the majority of this community. I understand everybody is not going to agree, and I respect that reasonable people come to different conclusions. But for me, my decision making has always been about trying to make sure I'm honoring what the community wants. Does it align with the values that the property owners have stated? It's been cost, growth, maintenance and operation, and local control being a big one. Engineering, is it feasible? Is it technically feasible? Regulatory, can we get it permitted? Financial, and again, people who've been attending these meetings know I've been pretty hawkish on the whole funding issue. Thank you very much to Joan Hartman and her staff for helping us with that. We're far from done on the funding. And then the last is operational. Can the district realistically operate, manage, and maintain it? And so based on all of those things, and most importantly, the feedback from the community, again, not unanimous. Everybody's not in agreement. I understand that, but what is the solution that is going to best serve this community for the long term? So in my vote, I believe, is about this practical, durable, responsible solution. It's also recognizing that the majority of the community has been clear in its preference for a gravity system, and I believe that matters. So I am prepared to support the resolution as well. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'll move approval of resolution 2604. And thank you to everybody that came out on both sides, getting their input. Appreciate everybody here.
Just for the record, if I may, Madam President, is the resolution as amended that is before you also available for the public?
Yes. I'll second.
Yes.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, and then this is a roll call.
Yes.
Director Bayram.
Aye.
Vice President Nelson.
Aye.
Director Parks.
Nay.
President Kennedy.
Yes.
Director Palmer.
Aye.
Okay. Very good. Then we will move on to the next item on the so again, just as a reminder, we are at staff recommendations. We're going to swap items 9 and 8. So we'll do item 9 first. And again, if you have any public comment on item 9, please fill out the card in the back and hand it up here to us. So with that, we'll go ahead and yes, I'll give you one. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that has been brought up is this question of, well, if we go into construction, how could we pay for or come up with other ways to pay for such a thing? Couple of notes, just a reminder, we have spoken to federal agencies such as the USDA who said they would give us a loan for this, and as a reminder, loans would be cheaper than what you and I can get for our homes just because it's a federal loan and we're a governmental agency ourselves. Another, I think, kind of interesting thing that got potential wind of last week, I'll call it. Nothing has happened yet because the federal government kind of took a hiatus from passing any new bills. But really importantly for us, our worded request for $4 million that was written in the bill previously may be increased to $30 million. So that if it put in the bill, that's one step. And then the next step is where it has to be funded, which is a separate step. But even getting our potential allotment from $4 million up to $30 million for construction could be a very big deal. I'm hopeful that Congressman Carvajal can make that happen. He seems to think he might, and that'd be truly fabulous. One of the other ways that was discussed that we could potentially pay for things would be to offset it with a new tax. And there's a process, as you can imagine, with a governmental agency to obtain a power, they call it, at LAFCO. And I'm going to talk about specific power acquisition. A lot of jurisdictions, including the county of Santa Barbara, use what's officially known as transit occupancy tax, often referred to as bed tax or hotel tax. It's a tax that's collected by hoteliers, people who run a VRBO or an Airbnb at their home, so forth, from people who stay there, and it's a percentage of the general cost to stay there. The rates throughout the state vary. Many jurisdictions, including again Santa Barbara County, recently increased their rates. When I was with San Luis Obispo County, we were right around 10%. I think they've increased theirs even 0.5% as well. The hope was that, if let's say Santa Barbara County were only 10%, you could raise it to what's some of the higher rates found, 15%. It could have been significant. It's not as significant as I had hoped because you can't increase it forever, right? So I just wanted to share this information. So Santa Barbara County is currently 14%, recently raised from 12%. And the highest areas that I found, as noted in the staff report, tend to be around 15.5%. So there's a little bit of room there, not a lot. As I noted, there is a process to obtaining this power. You go through LAFCO, you file some paperwork that if your board gives direction to at least pursue it, I bring that paperwork back to you next month. I'm sure it's all formally approved. Once you obtain the power, it allows, and I emphasize the word allows, you to put something on the ballot to increase the rate. There's no requirement to do anything. It does go to a vote. You can't just do it on your own without the public voting. But I think the last bit on this slide is what I would say the most, and that is if you think you might want to pursue this as we get closer to the 218 process and get it on a future ballot, the time to move is now, because you do have to go through various processes to make it happen. So the request tonight related to this particular item is pretty simple. Just direction to staff regarding whether or not it's something you even want to pursue. As I noted in the staff report, 1% of current TOT tax revenue is about $25,000. So it's not huge, but over 30 years, that's several $100,000. So it's not nothing either. So that's the staff report. Again, I hoped it'd been more like 4 or 5%, which would have meant $1 million potentially each year, but it's just not there.
Thank you. Okay, we'll have public comment first. I don't think we have anybody on. Oh no, wait, we do. Mike Brady on this side. Oh.
I got it.
Okay.
I may be a little bit off tone here. I apologize if I have a little hard of hearing. But if we're discussing funding in the future, I think at some point it's time for the county and the state who are really driving this to belly up to the bar a little bit somehow. And I think we need to start interfacing with them to see how they will help subsidize us. We have limited revenue as it is, and we can't continue to do studies and reports and engineering based on the money we have. So.
Thank you. Okay, we have one more. Edie?
Yeah.
I
just wanted to say formally, we're very much in favor of owning our own tax revenue. We think that seems a reasonable start. And then secondly, I couldn't feel more strongly about what you just said, which is we should be getting help from a lot of places. I know you guys very early, I think the first meeting we ever attended of the district, you talked about, Julia, you in particular, about writing grants. And I volunteer to help you. Yeah, I'll make copies. I'll help you. Anything we can do to help bring in funds. I would love, there's so many smart people that live here that have great experience in all different kinds of businesses. And I can imagine if we were able to pull off some street fairs, some promotions, some things that would, I hate to say bake sales, but some things that would in fact bring in some real revenue in much the same way that Solving has done in the LA Times and in social media, trying to pull people to a town for specific events and specific packages for our local restaurants and hotels to help them to pay for it. It would be great to see that kind of passion poured into that kind of activity to try to help ourselves. And we can, show up at various other, county and state entities as we are able to in letter form and email form asking for their assistance. So I think you have some soldiers who are willing to help us all defer costs and use our power that way as well.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think a better way to raise funding for the sewers is to maybe, if we can, somehow put in an extra 1/4% or 0.5% sales tax on everyone that's coming in here and all the tourists coming in here that use the facilities and use the restrooms and use everything. And that would raise a lot more money than $25,000 per year. And I don't think they would feel it on the bill if it's, another 1/4% or 0.5% sales tax or something similar to sales tax. You can't do a sales tax, but that would raise a lot more money and it might even fund the whole project, possibly, or at least part of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the board. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
A quick question for Mr. Savage. These would be 2 separate votes. However, the 218 is a property property owner vote, and a TOT tax would be registered voters, or maybe that's a better question for council. I believe that's correct. But
Thank you. Completely 2 separate issues. The Prop 218 process pertains to the capital cost as well as later the maintenance and operation of the system. This is a separate issue that goes to registered voters, whether or not they want to approve or oppose a tax, whether it's a sales tax or whether that's a TOT. That's a whole separate vote.
so much like the election of the board members is the registered.
Exactly. It will be basically the same group of people that will be voting on the tax issue.
And maybe from a cost standpoint, if that were included an election where we already have an election, or say board of directors, we could save cost an issue. Then the other point is about the sales tax. Mr. Savage, you probably know more about this than I do from your work at the county. Can you break that in the unincorporated area, break up a sales tax to that granular? The TOT you can, I believe, but I don't know if sales tax can do that or not. I don't know. Interesting.
I was gonna ask Council to answer from a city perspective. Yeah.
You certainly can.
You can.
So here's
So you can. Here's the tricky thing. Unless it exists, it's hard to get the information on it. So for instance, if I try to say, well, what's the sales tax today? They won't record it in that way, right? Whereas if you draw a boundary, GRA tax area, then it'll be established, all the parcels that are included are noted, and therefore you can get the information, and you can break down that tax.
you also need to be aware of whatever the limit is. In other words, I don't know where the county sales taxes are, but there is a limit imposed in order to add a tax to the existing tax. You have to be under the limit or go to legislature and raise the limit. I don't know what the situation here is, whether we're bumping up against the ceiling, but those issues could be addressed once we move forward.
Yeah, and I don't know that either, but maybe another question for council then as this item. Can we add that as for something the general manager to look into for the item as noticed, or do we have to come back to that?
You can absolutely direct them to, you're not making any decisions, you can direct to looking at it. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have one question. Right now it says that all of the TOT money collected mostly goes to the county general fund. So if we raise 1%, would that also go to the general fund? So we can exclude that. So and we can't get into the other one.
Yeah, right now.
We tried that one. I'm supervisor, hardly interrupt.
She's left. Along that line, I don't know if it's possible, but I'm thinking of a separate local, non-related sales tax for wine tasting and all of that stuff. Is there a way that just within the district, those, I don't know, I'm just asking because can you add a local tax of like 1% or 2% or whatever? It's kind of along the lines of what Sam was saying. I don't know.
Yes, those possibilities, because that's better separate regulation.
Different name, but they're different words.
Director Palmer, did you have any questions or comments on this item for General Manager?
Yeah, just based on the discussion, it says consider pursuit of taxation power. So I would like to broaden that to sales tax as well as the TOT. And if there are any, what would it take from a jurisdictional and additional powers that the district would need or to be negotiated with the county for getting a steady, revenue stream that's based on activity that's generated in the community that would be reinvested in the community. So I would want to see it broaden beyond the TOT, please.
We had a late comment, I'll go ahead and allow it. Thank you, Karen.
So I want to make sure that everybody understands that all the winery tasting rooms in this county are already assessing 1% of all their direct consumer sales to go to the county and also back to the Vendors Association. So we're already paying another 1% back to try to market this area, to bring in tourism and people to the area. So, and we're in a very tough industry. We're in the worst time the wine industry has ever experienced. Sam can tell you this as well. So please do not even consider thinking that we're a bunch of wealthy people that can give more money to help this out.
Thank you. Yes, yeah, that's understood. I think anybody who lives in this town is pretty well aware that the wine industry is undergoing some difficult times right now. Okay, so with that, I think do you have enough direction? And so we definitely would like to see this come back. We'd like to also see just exploration about the sales tax on top of the TOT. Do we need, is that good enough? Is that it? Okay.
It'll come back.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
And if I could I make one additional comment? And what's the cost associated with pursuing both of those? Both from the LAFCO perspective plus whatever it would be from a ballot perspective, please. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to add one. I don't know if Mr. Savage, knew this idea or came up, but it's stuff like this that we need to, look at doing. And, when I first heard about it, I thought, oh, okay, I had to think of that. Thank you, Mr. Savage, for his work.
Mr. Savage did do a lot of this work on this one. Okay, so with that, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move to item 8. And remember, we're just swapping these two items. General Manager, we'll let you lead us off.
All right, so, okay. Hello, there we go. Okay, so this is an item related to grants with an S on it and a loan without an S on it from the County of Santa Barbara. So we've talked for some time about how would we pay for financially the rest of the design activities and get us to a vote, basically, right? And we turned over every rock we could, and then the county stepped forward and said, well, here's a thought for you. And so this is the thought they had for us. First of all, that we could submit, much like we've done for groundwater monitoring and testing, grants, and it's grants because we break it up into separate, what I call work packages. That's not a magic term. It's a quoted, it's in quotes for a reason. Basically, you tie work to specific costs. You say, look, we want to have you pay for this bit of work. And then you submit receipts after you've done the work and they pay you back. Then they said, we have room to allow you to do that for up to $250,000 that we think we could make happen. So that's the first bit of it. The second bit is a single loan, which would include potentially, as noted in the attachments, a single disbursement, meaning a single check
that they would give to us for a zero interest 5-year loan. And after talking to county staff a bit, the proposal is that beginning in year 2, we would start making payments. They originally asked for year 1, and I said, well, we got to keep the money a little longer than that. And they said, well, how about year 2? And I said, okay, I'll take that to the board. I think there should be good support for it. I think it does make sense. But I do want to note that 150,000 is roughly half your annual revenues. So it's got to get us to the vote, right? Or else we'll be in trouble. And then what that means is the last year you would have kind of a double payment, but presumably if we move forward, we would get to a vote and we would know whether or not we're going to be moving forward with construction, which means we would get a construction loan and we would use the proceeds of that to pay off this loan account at the appropriate time. So that's really what is in front of you. One real quick note, there's been, I think the county and she's not here any longer, but Supervisor Hartman really worked hard to be creative, to come up with ways to do this. And I wanted to put this in here. I'm sure that President Kennedy will happily write an email or a letter to each one of these folks saying, thank you if this goes through and your board agrees that's appropriate. But Supervisor Hartman at the top was really trying to be as creative as she could. She recognized the problem we were faced with and that they might be able to help. Assistant CEO Wade Orton got creative as well. He saw what happened in Los Osos, was there as the public works director, and so really supports us trying to figure out our own solution and coming up with a way to do it. And then several people, there's 3 people at least, and I'm sure there's a ton of people behind the scenes that also help make this happen. Director Chris Sneddon, the 2 Matts, Matt Young, Matt Griffin, and a ton of KW staff, and then Lars Seifert from Public Health and Jason Johnson from EHS. It was conversations with all these people to get us there, and often it was phone calls and that sort of thing. And I just said anyone else I forgot because I just can't say how creative the county team got and came up with a solution. They heard us loud and clear. I think that's just great to show the kind of partnership looks like we've got the support we have in the county. So with that, I want you to consider the grants, plural, and the loan. If you do decide to approve either or both of them, there's some language in the packet itself that I would ask that you use, basically, authorizing the general manager to identify those discrete work packages. I put some samples in the item that I think are probably pretty close to getting us there. So authorize me to do that. Again, I would be reporting back on this regularly, monthly, and before I submitted anything to the county, I would bring back, here's the official submittal, that sort of stuff, and probably run it through the grants committee as well. So it wouldn't be, just tell me to go off and do this without needing more input. The board, the public will have some exposure to it. And then the second one is authorize the district president to sign the zero interest 5-year loan in the amount of $750,000 with the county water agency. I will note that our council has given a preliminary review of that document. County council, the council for the county, has not officially signed off on it yet. So there could be some little language tweaking, and that's why I worded this item the way I did. If the amount changed, the interest changed, or the payment terms changed, or the 5-year period changed, or any of that changed, I would recommend that we bring it back. But if it stays basically as it's in the staff report, I would ask the board to authorize the direct president to sign. So with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Just gonna note that Director Palmer was gonna drop off after this item we conclude. So, all right, anybody have any questions, comments for General Manager on this item?
Well, not question per se, but just to also just really emphasize Supervisor Hartman really pounded the wall to get this happening, and as well as all the other individuals up there who have taken it serious to try to help us, and just shows the backing we have from the county to help us, get to the finish line. So appreciate that.
Director Palmer, any questions, comments, et cetera, for General Manager or otherwise?
No, just again, a note of thanks to the county, to Supervisor Hartman and the county departmental staff for sharpening their pencils and figuring out how to get us through to a final design.
Likewise, I think a lot of people came together to make this happen in a pretty short time period. And so, yes, definitely appreciative. All right, with that, I think, so this, we need a motion.
Did you?
Oh, sorry, no, public comment. We did have somebody, Anna Marie Gott, I think she left. Anyone else in the room on this item? Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, and I would just note, we're getting the water without this. So very, very important. So I'll move to authorize the district president to sign a zero interest 5-year loan in the amount of $750,000. The county water agency and authorize the district general manager identify work packages and submit a separate grant request to the county of Santa Barbara, totaling up to $250,000 for design and engineering activities.
Thank you. Somebody like to take a second?
I'll second.
And we're going to do roll call.
Director Bayram. Vice President Nelson. Aye. Director Parks.
Aye.
Director Palmer.
Aye.
President Kennedy.
Aye. Just again, thank you very much, Director Palmer. I know this big lift here. It's the middle of the night for you and you're in the middle of your vacation. So thank you so much for attending and participating this evening.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was gone, and thank you, everybody.
It's okay, we'll take it from here. Thank you.
That's the record.
Take care.
Just tense, yeah. All right, moving on to item 10. Consideration resolution 2605 appropriations limit for the fiscal year 26-27, the Gann limit.
All right, very briefly, the Gann limit is more technically Article, what is that, 13B of the Constitution of the State of California. It mandates that annually we do this, we calculate and adopt the annual appropriations limit. It's really just the same numbers that we generate through the budgeting process. It's slightly different because it considers the special tax a little differently. It's an annual item, nothing particularly new here, and recommendation is approved, Resolution 2605.
Do we have any public comment on this item? None. Okay. Any board member? Would somebody like to just make a motion?
I'll move that we approve resolution 2605.
All right, Director Parks, second. We need a roll call on this.
Director Nelson, Vice President Nelson. Aye. Director Parks. Aye. Director Bayram.
Aye.
President Kennedy.
Aye.
And I'll note for the record that former Vice President, now Director Palmer, is no longer part of the meeting, so not voting from here forward.
Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda, consideration of resolution 2606, authorizing levy of property tax assessment and CPI increase.
Much like the last one, this is an annual item. This one actually has more direct impact on residents like myself and all of you that live in the district, because this is what we pay on our tax bill every year, right? So this one authorizes a tax levy with a CPI increase of 3.6%. That is calculated based on the LA Anaheim area, which is the one that we use every year, or have been using for the last couple of years at least. Changed slightly when they redid the region, that basically reflects what we pay from a CPI perspective. It also provides for the collection of our special tax via the secure tax bill for all the persons within the district. Just as a reminder, we do have a few exclusions in our list of things. We give, for instance, the church as an exclusion, and there are a couple of others. And based on the new CPI number, all of us would go from a little over $700 to $726.11. Time is everything, and I put this slide in here because much like I've had to do the last few years, because of when our meeting is held and when this stuff is due, and when I get the information from one elected official's office to when I have to turn it into the next one, it's a really tight window. I've got about a week and a half is all I've got. So much like I've done the last few years, this is kind of a pre-approval. I provided the list based on last year's property tax roll. So unlikely that those numbers are gonna change. Didn't change exclusions. Nobody else applied for exclusion to my knowledge. So I may have to add a parcel or take off a parcel. But basically whatever I get from the county assessor is our parcel list, and then I apply the tax, and then I turn that into the tax collector. Like I said, it's a really tight window, so we end up, because of the time of our meetings, asking for kind of pre-approval. So asking again for that approval, but I really want to be clear that if anything like a CPI amount were to change, I'd bring that back to the board. It's really just those more technical ones about, this parcel number, these two parcels joined into one, or this one split into two, are the kinds of changes that we've had to make in the past. There's occasionally some legally driven ones, but again, that's more of a technical, really than a philosophical policy approach. So the request is to approve 2606 and authorize the general manager and or the president to make technical changes as needed. And just by way of process, I've done this in the past where if I have to make a technical change, I run it by the president to have seconds eye and I just make sure that we're all good. So that's the request.
Thank you. Any public comment on this item? Okay, any comments, questions, etc.? Would somebody like to make a motion?
I'll move, I'll move resolution 2606 and allow the general manager and or president to make technical changes as well.
Okay, Director Parks is the second. We'll just vote now, right?
You can just all.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? And motion passes.
But,
Sorry.
that's a resolution, is that not?
Oh,
Sorry, we do need a roll call, that's right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You're right.
Okay,
Redo that, sorry. It's a resolution, so yeah, you're correct. Thank you, Director. So Director Farron.
Aye.
Director Parks.
Aye.
Vice President Nelson.
Aye.
President Kenny.
aye. All right, next item on the agenda is the consideration of financial audit contract engagement with pronounced Negro, Nick.
And then CPAs.
NNCPAs.
Yeah, so I spoke to your board about this last month and the difficulties we had getting the 24-25 annually required audit done. It is done, it is posted, we met our deadlines, but by the skin of our teeth. And I just simply, as I noted last month, couldn't recommend returning to the existing contractor. I did reach out for your direction and went to the number 2 person on our list. That was Negro Professional Accountants Corporation, and then CPAs as they're listed. They said, yeah, we'll keep the same costs we did last year, and we'd be delighted to sign a contract with you guys to do that for you. And so this really is just that. It's a, bring it back. Sorry, I'm on the wrong slide. Sorry. Anyhow, it's basically a request to approve the contract, the engagement contract within CPAS in the amount of $9,500 for the fiscal year that just ended. So it's time to start the new one, even though just 2 months ago we finally accepted the last one.
Great. Do you have any public comment on this item? Okay. Any questions or comments, etc., for general manager from the board?
I can move that we approve the contract to allow authorize the general manager and or the president to sign it.
Okay. The first and second?
I'll second.
All right, Director Parks second. Okay, this one we can just do a vote. We can just do a vote, right?
All in favor?
Yes, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, motion passes. Let's see, next item on the agenda is subcommittee reports. Let's go down the line. So yes, Finance Committee did not meet. Director Palmer has signed off. I don't know if anybody from Grants wants to make a comment. Hearing none. Project Management did not meet. Technical Committee did not meet. 218 did not meet. Okay, next item, General Manager and District Engineer comments.
Yeah, trying to do too many things. The technology got the better of me tonight. technology did come in tonight. I'll get it sorted out by next month. It is nice to have a projector, and thank you to the Grange for putting that up, so I don't have to haul one out and worry about whether or not it's gonna work each month. Okay, so, there real quick. So by way of status report, this is essentially regurgitation at some level, but I want to make sure you heard it out loud, what's in the status report. Wallace Group, as we've been talking about tonight, did continue to work on is gravity a viable thing to be able to get for our conveyance. Remind everybody that they're still under budget from the 30% design, and we certainly hope that will continue through 60 and 90% design. And did meet with the city and the Wallace Group regarding this whole legalization thing. I forget what I mentioned earlier, so I may say something that I said earlier, but there could be some real advantage in putting a thing within city limits as opposed to at the bottom of the district. Just again, because the city has some growth that's happening potentially in and around that area near the hospital. And so to be able to control flows from that area as well might be beneficial to them. I think from our perspective, that could be a real win-win, right? Because then it's something the city would maintain and take care of over time. One less thing for us to worry about. Somewhat related to the costs we discussed earlier. So remember, we had construction costs, and then we have ongoing operations and maintenance costs. We have been working with the EPA CAWA program for some time now, looking at various things. And one of the things that they agreed to begin looking into is the rates. So remember, construction assessment, O&M rates, right? So they've agreed that they can do that for us and give us a preliminary look into what rates might look like for this homeowners. That's really important because, as was mentioned earlier, I think somebody who's going to vote for something wants to know, well, it's not just construction costs, there are O&M costs. And tell me what the whole number is. Don't tell me the part of the number, then tell me another part of the number. Tell me what the whole number is. And so this will get us one step closer to being able to say, this is the whole number. And I, as a resident, something I'd like to see as well. I have been following up slowly with the Corps of Engineers. We do have some paperwork I need to file with them. It's just my time last month was way over budget. And so I wanted to try and kind of level that out a little bit. I expect to get to the core issues this month in the next week or so. I mentioned the potential increase, and I do mean potential. Lots of things have to happen to make that happen, but surely hope that the politics turn a little in at the federal level that allows that to get back on the docket, and that at least the bill gets changed to $30 million. Even if it doesn't get authorized for funding this year, those tend to carry from year to year, and so you get your place in line, so to speak, and it's nice to be in line with the $30 million request as opposed to a $4 million request. I have talked in the past about new laws related to ADA accessibility on our website. Council believes now, based on some digging, that may not apply to us. And it may not apply to us for a reason I hadn't anticipated. It may not apply to us because Santa Barbara County is smaller. It has nothing to do with our size. Santa Barbara County is under 500,000 people. So therefore, what happens to jurisdictions in counties that are under 500,000 changes. So that's good to know, because again, that was going to be for sure tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, or cause us to remove a bunch of stuff from the website, which kind of limits transparency, right? So this is great. I find it terrific if that is indeed the case. We'll re-verify that. I'll get a request out to make sure that my colleagues around agree as well. A future item that I do want to bring back to your board, and it hasn't really been an issue thus far, but previously had into 60 and 90% designs. I want to ask your board to give authority to me as the quote unquote project manager. And what I mean by that, and make it clear what the future item is, let's say the total contract's for $100,000, and $50,000 of it set aside for one thing, $50,000 for another thing. If for some reason it goes to $51,000 on one side and $49,000 on the other, let's still the same contract, but I have to bring everyone else back to the board currently because they potentially exceed my authority. So within a contract like the one we're currently working with Wallace Group, I'm gonna ask for authority to be able to manage it like a project manager would, right? And so that'll be a separate vote, and it'll be a separately agendized item. Won't be a surprise, but I just want to give you a report heads up on that. My priorities remain general admin stuff that from filling out paperwork, making sure we got audits, everything else that has to happen. Next is still financing and trying to find grants and so on, both for planning and future construction, wall script design stuff. City solving contract now needs to be raised a little bit because now that we're going to be in an earnest conversation about connecting to them and EQ tank discussion and all that. We've got to work all that into the contract. I'm also finding as I've been reviewing some other contracts that are out there, there's probably some fundamental changes that will have to be made to not just the contract that we will sign eventually with the city of Solving, but it's going to impact the contract the community of San Ynez has with the city of Solving. And I met with both of them the other day, and they both agreed, yeah, there's some things we've just been kind of setting aside and we know we need to address. So we may be the trigger to address a number of those things. And so my comment to, by the way, San Ynez CSD has a new general manager as of last week. I met with her and the outgoing general manager in the city of Solving, and just agreed that the three of us work together to make sure this thing meets everybody's needs in a way that makes sense, particularly given they haven't really opened up their contract in almost 30 years. Been pretty much the same contract. Also in the packet, groundwater monitoring wells, some of the people left. The data that is attached from Eurofins and some of the other data that's attached, that's the data that shows that it's not coming from ag, it's coming from ag-based that come out of human bodies. From a financial perspective, we have about $333,000 in our checking account through before the bills that you approved tonight were paid. So we've got a little bit of runway there, and certainly to get through a few more months at least, particularly now that we've agreed on the grants and such. Last but not least, I did include a couple of documents just because they're happening in our community and they don't always get enough play. The first one is as a homeowner here in the downtown area. I don't know how far and wide these got spread, but the completed application for an expansion of the Grand Hotel Best Partners and everything that is associated with that, from parking to how many big buildings and how they're going to handle wastewater. All of that was in a mailer that's attached. And then the notice of violation from that school related to their existing systems. This is mostly related to reporting. It's just another thing you have to do if you're running a plant. You have to report regularly on it, and they've either been late to the report or incomplete on a large number of them. Again, I don't mean to, it's a tough thing to run, and their school first and a wastewater purveyor second. So all of those are in the notes. I just wanted to put them out there. And with that,
great. Thank you very much. Questions, comments, etc. for Mr. Engineer?
Well, I'll just briefly report the guys kept me engaged in reviewing. Guys kept me engaged in reviewing and commenting on the product from Wallace Group, and we tackled a few issues such as tying on the bridges and talk about various aspects of the technical decisions that may be made in construction technique. And I'll be sharing with the grant committee guy the data that we've accumulated now that just completed in the first part of this calendar year, San Juan Bautista's sewer pipeline. I'm the city engineer there. And it's a small community of 800 sewer connections. It's twice the size of ours. And they just went through the rigorous process over many years to decide whether to rebuild the wastewater treatment plant or take a pipeline to the regional, make a regional connection to Hollister. They made the decision to go to Hollister. It's a 6-mile long pipeline The pipe is direct bury, open trench, 10-inch, 8 welded HDPE units, so it's pressurized with pump stations. And I'll share with you the summary of the costs and the sources of grants. They are not a disadvantaged community, like we are not. And they used about 7 different grant sources, the biggest one being the same ones that Guy has mentioned in the past, the USDA grants. They had a $11 million grant, and then miscellaneous grants totaling $18 million. And then they borrowed to get to their $26 million budget. This is all construction costs. That was awarded in 2023 and was built essentially within budget. Is now operational, but it's not apples to apples, but it's the closest thing to it that we have on the Central Coast. They're the same distance off the 101. They're south of San Jose by about 17 miles. And the information might be very useful. I was very impressed with their finance and grant individual that guided them in life and grants, kept track of qualifications of the city to be able to finance appropriately meet the metrics for USDA, USDA grant and loan expert. But anyway, I'll share that information now that it's all coming in and available accurately as makes sense with the finance committee.
Great, thank you very much. All right, next item on the agenda, director comments, anyone? Okay, all right, last item on the agenda, adjournment, I know everybody's waiting for this one. Can a motion to adjourn?
So moved for adjournment.
All right.
8:15.
Yes, okay, all right, all in favor? Aye. All right, again, thank you everyone for coming out tonight, really appreciate it.
Where'd everybody go? Where'd they go?
Gotta be in there. Gotta be.
They beat me. Anybody listen?
I should have said that.